listening to episode 152 of Mitolife Radio. I'm Matt Blackburn, and today I'm interviewing Andrew LaTour of GembaRed. I consider Andrew to be a pioneer in the red light therapy industry. Andrew's story of how he got into selling health products is very similar to mine. He attended various health conferences and studied the products, saw what they were selling them for, looked at the integrity, and in the context of red light therapy devices, he looked at the EMF exposure and a lot of the marketing claims that these companies were making about irradiance, penetration, and all of the little things that go along with red light therapy devices. So he created his company, GembaRed, out of studying all of these products. I love how, similar to my company, he really focuses on the education aspect and kind of digging beyond the mainstream alternative narrative, which goes with supplements and also goes with devices, and really digging into the science using the correct meters to measure different aspects of red light therapy. So if people were honest about how their devices worked, then we wouldn't need people like Andrew out there kind of exposing the truth about these popular red light therapy devices that are really overpriced. Everyone needs to make a living, but to mark up your product 10x or 15x is really unnecessary. And that's what's happening with a lot of these devices. So the same device that you could buy from Alibaba straight from China, you would spend 15 times more just because of the marketing material. So we'll just jump into the interview and I'll let Andrew break it down. He asked me several questions that are essentially myths in the red light therapy industry, such as, does spending more money get you a better quality product? Are the two best wavelengths 660 and 850 nanometers? Do you need full body coverage to get a full body effect? Do you have to be 6 inches away from the light? Are all ambient LEDs evil because they have flicker, EMFs, heavy metals, etc.? Is it better to get a panel that's FDA approved? And what is the pulsing myth? So here it is. Here is Andrew LaTour. All right, Andrew LaTour, welcome back for the third time to Mitolife Radio.
Thanks for having me, Matt.
Yeah, I'm excited about this one. I love your posts on social media. You have great blogs. There's tons of red light therapy companies out there just purchasing from Alibaba and marketing it under their brand, and it's just copy and paste a lot of the information I see on these websites, whereas yours, which is what I really respect, and that's my goal with Mitolife, is to make it unique and actually informative and actually helpful for people, whether they buy the products or not. And so just want to say thank you for putting out great information through your company.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I've been getting very similar feedback about the blogs, and I was worried no one would read blogs anymore. But I'm getting that feedback. Then, yeah, I write about what interests me and what I see people asking questions about on forums and emailing me about. And, and I try to really deconstruct things and break it down. I'm a chemical engineer by training, and, my mind works by really breaking down scientific topics and digesting it into like kind of a practical understanding, and then educating people about it and being able to use layman terms to convey the facts. So that's always one of my goals is just, there shouldn't be any fancy fluff to it of quantum this and quantum that and all this stuff. It's real, you can break it down and understand it on a layman's kind of level too.
I love it. Yeah. And we were talking before we started recording about how it's so easy to fall into these kind of like marketing sales funnels or rabbit holes of thought that aren't very accurate. Like I remember going to the Paleo FX conference for the first time, and I knew someone at the Joov booth, so I was pulled there, to name names, but they really highlighted the irradiance word, and it's
Hmm.
all about the power output. And all these other red light companies don't have
Yeah.
enough power output. And I was sold. I was just naive. I didn't, I trusted them, which a lot of
Yeah.
this comes down to trust with brands, and spent a lot of money, thousands and thousands of dollars, to later learn that they were using solar meters, right, to
Yeah.
measure the power, which isn't
Right.
accurate. And so their whole thing was built on a house of cards.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing. So the original models, they measured with solar power meters. That's where we came up with the 100 milliwatts per centimeter squared. And so what, that's your power output per unit area. So it's kind of broken down. That's why it's called intensity or irradiance. And these solar power meters will measure falsely high because they're not calibrated to measure the intensity from red and near infrared wavelengths. They use a photodiode that has a sensitivity curve that increases with wavelength. So naturally, if you measure on the far end of the wavelength spectrum, like red and near infrared, it's going to measure falsely high. So that's the root cause of all these companies' false advertising intensity. And again, that creates a lot of problematic myths that hopefully we'll cover. But yeah, I'll just point out, you sent me Ben Greenfield's blog, which I really try not to read competitors' blogs. And, Ben Greenfield is really just echoing a lot of what Joov says, like literally word for word. You can find the same words on Joov's blog. And one of the things he wrote, he said, "Oh, I found all this nonsense about companies claiming to be higher and higher power. And Joov now has the most ideal power." And so it's funny because you just told me they were all about power and we have the best power, blah, blah, blah. That was their gimmick 2 years ago. Now the gimmick is, now we have an ideal, but it's not about too much power or having the most power. Now we have the ideal. So the narrative keeps changing, and you can catch them all the time doing this kind of stuff. They don't care about the effectiveness. They care about the narrative and the sales. So, you catch this all the time. So, and again, even Ben's previous blog, they declared themselves the victor in terms of power. As long as you spend $6,000 on a giant 6-panel thing, then it'll beat a red rush, which is what they were comparing to. So a single red rush versus, which is whatever, $500 versus a $6,000 system. Sure, okay, the $6,000 system has more power. Anyway, so I can get, I'm just trying to break these things down, and unfortunately, a lot of these myths are kind of coming from Joov, so we'll have to kind of talk about them. So yeah, on that topic. So one of the myths I want to ask you: do you need to spend more money to get a better quality device?
Yeah, I'm kind of on the fence with that one. I guess if we're talking about devices, I would say yes. Supplements, no.
Supplements, no. Like you
Generally.
don't need to spend a lot on supplements.
Generally, a lot of the marketing, it's liposomal, it's these pump products, liquid products
Okay.
that I speak out against. But yeah, as far as devices, I would say no.
Yeah,
Generally.
and again, it's similar with devices because they can add all these fancy features, all pulsing and all these extra features that you don't actually need, which don't add to the benefits anyway. And then they can justify a higher price. But again, when you're looking at a Joov Solo now is over $1,400, and you look at a GembaRed reboot panel, which is about $900. Your mind, I think it's a fallacy that your mind jumps to trying to explain why there's such a big difference. So it's kind of it's part of Joov's marketing strategy to be the highest cost and to perpetuate that they've got this high quality, because your brain naturally wants to rationalize why would they be charging so much. It has to be the quality, it has to be this or that, and that's not necessarily true. And Alex Fergus just did a big side-by-side comparison of all these brands.
I saw
And
that. Yeah.
Joov ended up kind of somewhere in the middle, and there was a number of drawbacks with the Joov. But so really, it's not about the cost; it's about When you look at the studies about intensity, it's about the power output, it's about how much coverage you get, the area coverage you get, and the wavelengths, obviously, and then how you dose it, how long you dose it, how often you dose it. Those are the real parameters, not the price. So, the price is kind of this very strong fallacy. So I'll ask you, because I mentioned wavelengths, is what are the two best wavelengths for red light therapy, 660 and 850?
These are good questions. Yeah, 2 years ago, I would have said yes. But then I've seen studies, I think 650, like slightly different from those. And before we started recording, we were talking about near infrared bulbs. And I have a YouTube video, I think from 4 years ago or so, where I made the PVC 10 at Home Depot, put the painter's canvas, did the 4 250 watt bulbs. And that felt more like photobiomodulation to me than sauna therapy. I never really got a deep sweat in that thing.
Yeah.
But the reason why I bring that up is because my friend Brian Hoyer, I recently met in North Idaho, close to my neck of the woods. He was saying that the near infrared has more of a broad wavelength spectrum, whereas 660, 850, it's unnatural. We wouldn't get that in the sunlight. We get near, mid, and far infrared, and we'd always get it with heat, which is another topic.
Yeah.
But the long answer short, I would say no.
Right. So yeah, the reason I ask about specifically 660, 850, that's what you see in Joov. That's what you see in most of the other panels. And like you said, everything's kind of copy paste. Whatever Joov's doing, all these other panel companies want to mimic it because it sells well. So they're just all going to fall in line and do the same thing because it sells well, and they don't need to re-educate people about, whoa, what about 630 nanometers, what about 830, what about 810, what about all these different wavelengths that are possible. And a lot of them haven't even been studied in combination with each other, so we don't know what the synergy is between 660, 850. There's sometimes good studies of 630 and 830 for skin and things like that. But really, there's a lot we don't know for sure what, I don't have the answers either. We don't know for sure what are the best wavelengths, what's the best combinations. Hopefully the studies will start to reveal that. And like you were kind of talking about contrasting it with an near infrared heat lamp. So sometimes, it's kind of hard to make sure we're talking about LEDs, which are quasi monochromatic, which means your peak wavelength might be at 660, but actually that does have some spectrum of a distribution. So you do get a little bit of 670, you get a little bit of 680. So it's kind of a bell-shaped curve or whatever, as opposed to a laser, which is just a single wavelength. And you're comparing that to a heat lamp, which is an incandescent source. So it emits more of a broad spectrum and it has more of the longer wavelengths in it. And the reason why LED products and lasers and the whole study of photobiomodulation, actually, they defined it to be non-thermal and exclude heat lamps from the definition of photobiomodulation. So all the science is specifically non-thermal, and usually they choose this optical window of wavelengths, and it's usually between 600 to 900 nanometers. Sometimes you could say the range is up to 1,000 or even 1,200, depending on the study. But usually it's this narrow range where our skin offers a bit more transparency to let the red and near infrared penetrate into the skin, and then it gets into the deeper layers, and it can help with the mitochondrial function in those deeper layers. So really, as long as you're within this range of this optical window, 600 to 900 or a little bit more, as long as you're within that, you're getting that penetration. There's not a huge difference in penetration. I'm trying to do a bigger blog about that because maybe there's a difference of 20 or 30% extra penetration if you go into the longer wavelengths of near infrared. And then what's it doing? It's stimulating your mitochondria either by absorbing into the cytochrome C oxidase, that's your terminal enzyme for your respiratory chain that produces ATP, and it dissociates nitric oxide from the CO, so you get the nitric oxide, and then all these downstream benefits. But if your mitochondria is working more efficiently, producing that ATP, and it really doesn't seem to matter the wavelength. There are a few peaks of absorption that Tina Caro has found, but it seems like we're not really following those peaks. And then the other mechanism, just to say, is that actually it absorbs into the interstitial water of the mitochondria and reduces ROS and improves kind of the transfer of nutrients and ATP. So you still get the same effect of improved mitochondrial function.
What's funny, Andrew, I was just reading, I'm still getting through Morley Robbins' new book on copper, magnesium, and iron. It's just like so dense. And to what your point, what you were just saying about CCO and nitric oxide, one part just jumped out at me today. He said that nitric oxide, and he cited the study, nitric oxide has the unique ability to open the ferroportin doorway without copper. I don't know if we're going too off track here, but basically without copper, you can't regulate iron. And so I'm guessing if nitric oxide is freed up from red light, then you could actually regulate iron, which is why it's so beneficial for people with quote unquote anemia, or iron over. So
nice. Yeah. So yeah. And that, and people are taking all these nitric oxide supplements like beet supplements and all these things, but you get it, from red light and from sunlight and all these things. And yeah, just about the incandescent bulbs, which have a spectrum. So the sun is an incandescent light source, right? And so that's why they say you got an incandescent bulb that works by heating and emitting that black body radiation. It's a similar spectrum to the sun. The big thing that a lot of times they don't tell you is that the sunlight comes through the atmosphere, and the atmosphere has a lot of moisture. It's absorbing certain wavelengths that have higher absorbance by water. So it's actually a modified spectrum from the sun that's kind of protecting us from the dehydrating kind of rays that you would get from a normal incandescent. So there's actually studies on what's called water filtered IRA, which a company called HydroSun has done a bunch of studies where they actually use a water filter in front of their incandescent bulb, and having that water filter removes that kind of drying out effect that happens when it goes through the filter, and it protects you. So HydroSun says, we're trying to protect people from the dehydrating effects from normal incandescent bulbs. So that, that ends up being kind of a myth, because incandescent bulbs aren't necessarily as natural as a lot of people say. There's still, artificial aspects to it that make it undesirable.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's with these clinical studies, I think people could latch on to them as like the end all be all truth, but there's so many factors. Like I remember Jack Cruz, talking about how EMFs, every clinical study is done under the influence of EMFs and artificial blue wavelength light, which will skew the results. And I mean, you could go on and on, like you can't control for anything or even close to anything. Even with the vitamin D studies, they're measuring nocturnal animals, right, for this circadian hormone. So
yeah, and that's like with the diet studies. So the diet studies, they might do them under artificial blue light, which is stressful and raises cortisol and kind of throws things off. And even if it's not in a clinic and you're allowed to go out in your daily life, you don't know what people's lifestyle factors are and how that affects the diet in different ways. So, it's always interesting. And it reminds me, there was a study where they were treating people's brains, and they were concerned about them going outside in the sun, because the sun offers you the same wavelengths of red and near infrared. And it could lead to a biphasic dose response if they're spending too much time in the sun. So if they treat them in the clinic and then they go outside in the sun, it can throw off their dosing calculations. So I just thought that was interesting, because they're acknowledging that red light therapy can even come from the sun in the first place.
Yeah, I love how complex this topic is. And you mentioned there's only a 20 to 30% increased penetration with near infrared. So I think in Dr. Lawrence Wilson's book, I think it's changed over the years, but with these heat bulbs, they say, I think 3 to 4 inches penetration, whereas with the LEDs, you can only go, what is it, a couple inches or something?
Well, yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out in this blog, and this, again, with a lot of the studies, they're almost contradictory. You'd think it'd be straightforward. Some of them have done modeling where they get about 4 millimeters with red and maybe up to 10, with near infrared. And so that's a centimeter. That's less than half an inch. But then I read another study where they used 100 milliwatts per centimeter squared laser on the skin of just red, which people say is only superficial, and they said they got 50 millimeters, which is 5 centimeters is almost 2 inches, a little less than 2 inches, which is huge. So it's such a huge difference of different studies and what's the actual penetration. So yeah, I've seen, again, through the years, different far infrared companies claiming however many inches penetration, red light. So I'm trying to kind of organize it and figure it out myself. So, and that's the thing. It's kind of like at this point, I never got too caught up in the penetration. It's more just kind of looking at kind of the systemic benefits, the whole body benefits, even if whether or not you can, penetrate directly to the brain, that might be a sophisticated thing to try to do to yourself. That people have used red light helmets and these really basic strip lights of 660 nanometer LEDs, and they wrap it around their head and with kind of a rig, and they get benefits for Parkinson's and all these things. It was really big in Australia, and what happened is that they kind of built kind of a little bit of business out of this, and they have DIY instructions. It's called Red Lights on the Brain, and it's really interesting stuff, but they only use 660 nanometer, and even if it's just surface level and it's just getting into the skin around the skull and maybe into the skull, you're getting those systemic benefits. You're getting it into the blood, kind of like the V light. They kind of stick it up the nose, and you're kind of irradiating the blood vessels around the nose, and maybe a little bit is making it through the skull into the brain, but it's more of a systemic thing than just, okay, let's just laser our brains and see what happens, So I don't think that should be done kind of at home without some supervision. So it's probably better that you might not be getting as much power or penetration as you think.
Yeah, I like that you brought up systemic whole body benefits, because that's something that took me a while to wrap my head around. For some reason, it's such a simple concept, but just the fact that photobiomodulation, has the direct tissue effect, right? Like if we shine it on the face, but it's also having a systemic effect, where your blood's circulating through there, and if it's hitting the blood, then it's irradiating all your blood volume, right?
Yeah. And that was one of my questions as a myth is, do you need full body coverage to get a red light therapy effect? The answer is no, it's definitely not. I've searched the literature, and I've only found 5 studies that use full body red light therapy. And so all these companies, they say, oh, there's 5,000 studies. Oh, look how great we are. We're backed by 5,000 studies. But no, there's only 5, and 2 of them didn't have a significant benefit, one of which was the Joov Elite system. So it's we're really on a really flimsy kind of scientific basis if we really look at the context and look at the details, like I do as an engineer. You don't just say, oh, there's one, a lot of the studies are done with lasers, which are a very small spot size, less than a centimeter, less than maybe a couple millimeters at most, very small spot size, but they get all these great benefits from the 5,000 studies or whatnot. Most of them are with small lasers or clusters of LEDs or clusters of lasers. And maybe they move the laser around and they do a couple different spots of a muscle, but really they don't do all day the whole body with a laser. So again, that's one of the biggest fallacies. And I have a really good blog about using targeted light therapy for the systemic response.
Interesting. So when you mentioned laser therapy, like I've seen biohackers use like cold lasers. They're like thousands and thousands of dollars for like these little pens almost. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah. So, the original studies on red light therapy was actually with lasers. A guy named Ender Meister did, when they first invented a laser diode. It was a near infrared laser. That was the first laser. And they wanted to test if it was cancerous or not, because they didn't know what it was. So they tested on all these rats. And what they found was it didn't cause cancer. And actually, the rats that were treated, their hair grew back faster. And, they had better wound healing and all these things. So that started in the 1960s. The science of LLLT, which is low-level laser therapy. So that's always a key word when you're looking in PubMed, to use LLLT, because the term photobiomodulation is relatively new. So LLLT is a good one. And then you can search LLLT and, whatever indication you're looking for, or penetration profiles or dosing profiles and things like that. It all started with laser. And, now there's more and more studies that have correlated that lasers and LEDs can perform similarly. But again, context is king. And that, that's what I've always said as an engineer. In no matter what industry, you got to look at a laser is going to be a very highly concentrated, narrow beam. LEDs are usually more diffuse; they're a little lower power. It's hard to correlate the two when you can get down to the nitty gritty of the context. So you can't just say, "Oh, here's a laser study that justifies my LED panel," which is what, again, most companies are doing, and even books are doing. It gets kind of out of hand.
So that video that you referred to by Alex, where he was doing the side by side with all the power output on all these red light companies, is there, like, can you get too weak if you go with a brand where it's just you're not getting a benefit because it's not enough power output, or is that not true? Are you always going to get a benefit no matter what?
Yeah, you can get too weak. So basically, and it has to be really, really low, like less than 1 milliwatt per centimeter squared. So it has to be really low. And basically, the studies will say you can use this for an infinite amount of time. There's no photobiomodulation. And this is important when we talk about ambient red light. So if you just want a generic red light bulb to use as a reading light at night, or I sell night lights and book lights and things like that, and some people do ask me, can I get a therapeutic benefit from this? And I say, no, there's no wink with these products. It's just a reading light. So you don't get a therapeutic benefits just from having some red strip lights around your room, or just having a red light bulb on. And that's a good thing, because again, you don't want to give yourself biphasic dose response just by sitting in a room. But some people do get kind of a false impression. Why don't I just get a red light bulb and sit in a room that's kind of red? And they're not really getting that context that you need to be really close to a red light panel, and ideally having that skin contact, because our skin is naturally designed to reflect a lot of the light away from us. A bunch of studies I found are about 60% of the light gets reflected off of our skin. So if you're 6 inches away, like all these companies are saying, and that's one of the biggest myths, is like you come into this industry and everyone's saying the same thing, so you assume it's the right thing, but really being 6 inches away is a really inefficient way to dose it. And I've heard a few interviews with Dr. Hamblin where he says, you use skin contact, you minimize reflection losses by pressing it into the skin, and even pressing it a little bit compresses the tissue and can help get a little bit more penetration. So if everyone's really talking about penetration and then they correlate it with just the wavelength, a lot of times it's other factors like having skin contact and understanding the tissue, the tissue and temperature and things like that. So, that's a big one that I've been trying to bust. And I keep on having to remind people of, like, most of the studies are using skin contact. So again, you got to understand that we don't have any context for how long should you stand in front of a panel that's 6 inches away. We're just kind of doing what feels right.
Right. Does that differ? Because I know Ben talks a lot about the leydig cells in the testes, and that's like a big selling point for men for that brand.
Yep.
And I had a sex expert on the show, I think earlier this year, last, and red light therapy came up. And hopefully I'm not responsible with this podcast for perpetuating the myth, but he was like, whatever you do, guys, don't, stand within 6 inches of your panel, or basically you'll fry your nuts, or fry your sperm or whatever. That's not necessarily true, right?
I thought I heard it differently, that he had kind of offhandedly said that near infrared was damaging to the testes. Right. And maybe it's a combination of, because it's the heat. So we know we don't want to heat up our testes too much, because our sperm are very sensitive. So we know we don't want to overheat our testes, and in fact, there's products that we want to cool our testes and ice them and all these things. And again, that's really simple to avoid heating your testes. Like Ben says, you move further away, or you use a lower intensity panel. So that's definitely a big myth that I've heard for years now, because I think it was one of his earliest podcasts about this topic. People are saying, "Oh my God, we can't have near infrared anywhere around our balls, or they'll die." And a lot of times people are sending me these images. There was one study, that studied rats, and they used red and they used the near infrared. And somebody sends me a picture of, like, the near infrared, and the cells are all mangled because, in the near infrared picture compared to the red. And I said, why are people circulating this picture with zero context for what was the dose, what was the intensity, what are the real details? And I found it. And yeah, they were using very high doses on these rat testicles. So they're tiny little testicles, very, very high doses. Of course, you're going to have some problems. So, again, so it's really just being practical. And most of the fears about near infrared, with the testicles, with the eyes, with the skin, it's really overblown, and it's because it's too much intensity, too much heating. So if you can avoid the heating factor and move further away, or use, again, panels that are practically, with a practical amount of intensity, not too much, then they should be safe. So, I think it's perpetuated a lot of myths that near infrared is bad for different reasons. And I think it's mostly the intensity. And there was a recent study I found called Near Infrared Light and Skin, Why Intensity Matters. It was last month, October 25th. And it really goes through, the intensity, because we got to know the intensity. Companies need to be honest with it. Otherwise, the numbers I'm telling you don't mean anything. So they show photo rejuvenation versus photo aging. For photo aging, if your irradiance is greater than 100 milliwatts per centimeter squared, that's the photo aging category, is if you're above. And guess what Joov's always said? They're greater than 100 milliwatts per centimeter squared. Guess what everyone else says? They're greater than. And it's always been false that they never delivered that much intensity, and for good reason, because they would be causing photo aging. So it's just, none of this made sense, and now everyone thinks they're using 150 milliwatts per centimeter squared, or all these latest panel companies are using outrageously high numbers. If they actually were delivering that much intensity, you'd have eye issues, and you'd have skin issues, and you have ball issues, and all these things. So for photo rejuvenation, they say to use intensities that are similar to the intensity we experience from sunlight, which is about 20 to 40 milliwatts per centimeter squared. So in this section, they say for photo rejuvenation, you want about 30 milliwatts per centimeter squared. So that's a reasonable intensity, but I can't even talk to anyone about this, because nobody understands the context. They all think they have 100 milliwatts per centimeter squared. So it'll take some time until, like, reality strikes some people. and hopefully, people can get this. So I think that's the big thing, is to think about more what's like a reasonable daily dose, what's a recommended daily allowance for lights and for red and near infrared light, as opposed to, oh, I need this huge therapeutic intensity and I need to drench my whole body in it. I need to penetrate my brain and my guts and all my organs. Just take it easy and get your daily dose, and rejuvenate your cells without trying to make it much more than it is.
It sounds like a really grounded and sane approach. And I and with the photo aging thing, I wonder, because you see my work on lipofuscin and stuff, and that relates to the skin and
Yeah.
age spots and stuff, which red light therapy helps reduce and prevent and perhaps even reverse. I wonder how much of that plays a role in photo aging, because I know there's a lot of substances that get lodged in our tissues that are extremely reactive to UV and blue light. So I wonder if that's a context too, like how much fish oil someone's slamming,
Yeah, right. And that's the kind of thing, is a lot of times they want to demonize UV, and then they want to demonize infrared, and sometimes mainstream, they want to create sunscreens that block infrared as well. But really, it seems to be more of the heating aspect of these wavelengths. If you have too much heat, I think one study, if they allow the skin temperature to reach over 45 degrees Celsius, then you get a doubling of ROS. And ROS seems to be, the reason why you get a biphasic dose response is too much ROS. So if you let the skin temperature go up, and a lot of times you can just maybe have some air conditioning in your room, or you could cool your skin down, or something like that. That's what they do. So, not letting that heat build up is one of the biggest thing. It's not blaming the wavelength itself.
So Andrew, how would that translate to our off-grid spot? We have a wood burning barrel sauna. There's like steam saunas, there's far infrared electric saunas. There's these infrared, near infrared saunas now. Are those all harmful in that context? Because I felt like I was cooking in that thing.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the kind of contradiction where I use far infrared heating mats, and I try to I heat up my body and try to get a good sweat on, and it's like, well, I'm heating up my skin too. Well, what's the real deal here? So again, maybe if it's just for a shorter time span, 30 minutes or an hour, to get your sweat and your metabolism and activate those heat shock proteins or whatever you need to do, but maybe not linger in there for a long time, or maybe you're getting it without UV or other factors that could be causing issues. So yeah, that's again a tough one to reconcile. Of, well, some heat is good and other contexts heat's bad. So so yeah, that's a good kind of consideration.
Yeah, I wonder, maybe there's some internal processes that happen when you get a sweat on that kind of balances out that doubling of ROS, I'd imagine. I think, don't you have like an upregulation of antioxidant enzymes and stuff?
Right. And yeah, it could all bounce back with hormesis and things like that. So there's not necessarily, I think, again, it's all with moderation and not sitting in a sauna for hours and hours or things like that. So I think it's, it seems pretty reasonable.
Yeah. Do you have another myth question for me?
I do. Yeah, I'm looking at my list. We covered a bunch of them. Are all LEDs evil because they have high flicker, high EMF, and blue light, and heavy metals, and the boogeyman will find you?
I'd say no. And this is something that you educated me on, I think, earlier this year. I still see it on social media, and maybe I was responsible a couple of years ago because it's like only incandescence,
Yeah.
But you did an amazing blog that I still share with people, where you used 3 different measurements, right, of the different brands of LED bulbs, and we're talking about ambient light here, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I was comparing different ambient bulbs, and yeah, it's really helped people get really affordable red LED bulbs. It's been a good blog for everyone. But first off, with LEDs, you can actually tailor the wavelength. So obviously, you have specific diodes that emit certain wavelengths. So obviously, if you have a red diode, it's not going to emit any blue. So if you have red and near infrared LEDs, and again, I've been getting these questions ever since I started my business of like, don't your LED aren't they evil? And I'm like, well, why exactly do you think they're evil? And then they're like, I don't know. I remember a headline from Dr. Mercola years ago said it, and that was true. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when LEDs were first introduced, they didn't have the right kind of drivers to eliminate the flicker. And so they ended up, a lot of the LEDs that first came on the market, they did have 100% flicker, which means they were like almost fully on and off, but at a rate that we can't see 120 hertz, because it's twice our AC, our alternating current from your line. So a lot of the initial LEDs were extremely high flicker, and obviously for good reason. All these influencers have said abandon the LEDs, go back to incandescents. But now in the year 2021, there's more regulations. The European Union actually just put out a regulation on flicker, so they won't allow. It's basically they won't allow more flicker than an incandescent bulb, and you can go even lower because they use AC/DC drivers that are much better. You can have practically no flicker. So the flicker thing's been taken care of with most lights. You still want to check them out and test them.
That's interesting. So you said the European Union just passed a law that won't allow more flicker than an incandescent bulb?
Yeah, essentially.
Wow.
So they're adding more stringent, and usually the European Union's ahead of us in terms of banning things that aren't good for you. And the IEEE, which is the, I think, Institute of Electrical Engineers or something, and they established guidelines in 2010 for flicker guidelines for if there's more than 10% flicker in any light, any lighting source, that could be high risk, especially for people that have sensitivities, have epilepsy triggers, that have mood disorders, children. Especially if you're sleep deprived, you're more sensitive to flicker. So we've known for a long time what the hazards of flicker are. So, so basically what I'm trying to say is I get attacked on both ends. I get people who say, oh, throw out your LEDs and switch to incandescents, when like I've proven LEDs can actually be lower flicker than incandescents. And then I got the opposite side of people saying, oh, flicker's not a problem. I've never felt a flicker problem in my life, and I feel great and whatever. So I'm like, all right, that's good for you. But the facts are the facts. I can pull up tons of studies and industry standards on flicker. And then the same thing with EMFs, which is, again, a tough topic to kind of break down. What's the real effect of EMFs? And with red light therapy, you have two main types of EMFs. You've got magnetic fields and you've got electric fields. And electric fields you can usually mitigate pretty easily with a grounding your device or grounding your adapter. And just to pick on Joov, their latest generation is they use a plastic enclosure and only a 2-prong outlet, and it's not grounded. So when Alex did his review, I was looking very closely at the electrical field, and it did turn out to be much higher than all the other panels because it's not grounded. So I was like so flabbergasted. But again, it's because I think they've gone so mainstream that the mainstream audiences don't really care about EMFs. They're not looking at it. And that's why I get trolled is it's gone so mainstream that who cares about EMFs? We want to use 5G and cell phones and this and all these things that keep us connected. Why would I care about a little extra EMF in a red light panel? So I get it both ways of is it an issue or not? And again, a lot of those original guidelines for standing 6 inches away came from having high EMFs in some of these panels with the fans and with the magnetic field from the drivers, that as long as you stand 6 inches away, the inverse square law and all this stuff, the magnetic field drops, practically to zero as long as you're a few inches away. So that's where a lot of these guidelines came from, to placate the people like us who care about EMFs are like, well, I don't want to get exposed. Well, I'll just stand 6 inches away. And so that's where this myth almost kind of came from, of like, well, just to make people, not worry, just say, okay, just stand 6 inches away.
Interesting. Wow, you said so many good things there. And I've been playing with the sauna space. They have like a Faraday, basically an EMF shielded tent thing, which I think is pretty cool. I remember hearing years ago, I think from Jack, that Wi-Fi and cell towers and EMFs in general block your ability to absorb light. I think Andrew Marino in a book kind of went into that in scientific detail, like going somewhere. I think there's scientific proof for that. But I thought that was kind of a smart idea to minimize EMFs to get more benefit from the light. And, you could do that without, buying a tent like that. We just got like EMF shielding paint, which is super crazy expensive, the black graphite paint. Plan to do that to the bedroom. But I like what you said about the 2-prong thing. It drives me crazy when I buy a device. Like I think even the Somavedics, a lot of these things just have the 2-prong. And so the mitigation is just to buy that adapter, right? Because you can ground those, right? Or
if you can replace that adapter with the kind of similar voltage. So that's what I've done with a bunch of LED pads that I found generically, and I reviewed them. I said, if you can find, and I posted links to the actual ones, so you don't have to find them, but they're 12 volt adapters usually that I get from Jamico. It's a website that sells all kinds of electronics, and they're low EMF adapters. So you plug them in, it's got the 3-prong. Then now you have a low cost pad that's also, now you made it low EMF. So it's a great hack to do. And I was like, I should do a review on like that Somavedic and the Blue Shield, because they both plug into the wall. And I think they both have some electric field that you can measure off of them, right? So
I think you talked about that once. Yeah,
I don't know.
You're not standing right next to them, but still, I just sent you in the chat. I don't know if you could open that, but that's kind of the adapter I was talking about. Or maybe that's the one, but one that has the 3rd prong on the other side. I don't know if that would work.
I had pictures on my blog years ago showing a 3-prong versus a 2-prong, like a picture of it. I said, don't use a 2-prong. And guess what Joov does now? But this is a 3-prong adapter. So if your device only has 2 prongs, plugging it into an adapter won't change anything.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Maybe like a power strip or something. I don't know. A grounded power strip.
I haven't seen it, but you can, like, on the reflector of all those chicken kind of coop heat lamps, you can buy that that aluminum reflector for your 250 watt bulb. And so I've seen people use that 3rd prong and then clamp on the ground wire to that, so you're actually grounding it kind of a DIY kind of way. So you can actually get a ground wire, clamp it onto that aluminum reflector, and then you're much more grounded. Or like you said, you got the sauna space, and they've got that whole enclosure that's fully grounded and shields the bulbs.
Yeah, what's cool is they have a little adapter too, where you could ground it directly to the earth if your house isn't grounded. So they have like a little metal piece. Yeah. But that's I'm glad that you brought. Yeah, go ahead.
I had an early customer that said, "Oh, I'm still getting high EMF." I was like, "What's your outlets look like?" And they're like, "Oh, they're still all 2-prong." I'm like, "Yeah, that's the problem." And again, it's not just for EMF. When people designed houses, they didn't care about EMFs. It's for like electrical safety and for discharge and things like that. It's the code to have 3 prongs and to have devices plugged in properly as a way of safety and electrical reasons. So it's not just for EMFs, which kind of, it's all EMF in a way, but yeah.
Well, I'm glad you brought up EMFs, because I've been obsessed with frequencies and playing with plasma gases again, and just all this stuff the last few months for some reason. And Brian Hoarder of Shielded Healing, I went to his house at North Idaho that he's building, and he's kind of building it from scratch. And it's kind of cool how some rooms, like his living room, is made to have more EMF exposure so that you can use your phone and stuff. but then the bedrooms are like completely shielded. And I love that idea of like different living spaces have different levels of blocking. And I was asking about his bulbs, and I took a picture, I forget, but that's one of the most fascinating parts about EMF mitigation for the home to me is the bulbs. Like the last two houses I moved into, it had CFLs everywhere. And like the first 24 hours I was there, I was walking around switching out all the bulbs. And I use the sunlight, LITE, that you in the blog, red, orange, and then yellow if we need a lot of light. And my favorite's still the orange, I think, because that's a good balance and I can see pretty well under those. But yeah, it's a huge factor, right? Like people don't realize having all these bulbs hitting them at night, especially the compact fluorescents, right? Those are those the worst? I guess we could talk about that.
I would think, I would say they're the worst. And like it's kind of like LEDs, maybe they've improved a little bit over time with the flicker when a lot of the fluorescents came out, same problem, tons of flicker, but then they switched the ballasts and the kind of the power adapters for them. But their spectrum is very odd if you just Google the spectrum of fluorescent light bulbs. There's got a bunch of peaks of blue and green, and it's just very sporadic. Like I can't believe a human would ever want that kind of spectrum. So I would stay away from and then if you smash one, then you've got mercury and all these bad things coming out. So
I did that at the old house, unfortunately, with I think the shop lights, and I was scared, but then I just vented it and I was like, whatever, I can deal with it. It's probably not going to kill me. But I'm working on, like Brian showed me in person, the Hopo 2O's color spectrometer, the handheld. I think that's what Matt Maruka and a lot of these guys use, and they're like a couple grand. And I think there's actually one that Brian uses that measures flicker. Have you played with that one, or?
I have. That's the Hopo color, and that one actually was Primal Hackers, Thaddeus's, and he I think he sold it to him. And Alex Fergus is using the Hopo color with extended range, so it can measure some near infrared spectrum as well, because a lot of standard spectrometers, they only measure visible, so it's very hard to find ones with the near infrared. So that's actually a very affordable 2,500, or it's about 2,500. That's actually really affordable for it's spectrometer, flicker meter. It does a radiance, but I think it's still a little finicky on a radiance. But it does those three features, and you can get the extended range. So it's a really good value for for 3-in-1. To get all those devices separately, it would be $6,000 or $8,000. So yeah, I think it's a pretty good deal and you can check out flicker and spectrum. I've gotten a Radix Lupin flicker meter, which is only like $115. I got it on Amazon, and it gives you a measurement of flicker. You can plug it into your computer and can tell you the frequency of the flicker. So it's really neat. It's super affordable. And I think I found it on a forum where people were concerned about the flicker from their computer monitors and their laptop monitors. Because, if you're on this all day, they were like, computer science people or whatever, you want to measure your screens and see how much they flicker. And a lot of times, if you use the dimming function on the screens, then that creates pulsed width modulation flicker, which is also very distressing because it's fully on off, to give kind of an optical illusion of dimming when it's really just pulsing your light. So yes, and I noticed Mitored using a Radix Lupin flicker meter as well, long after I published that I was using one. But I don't just use that. That's just a toy. I also get my panels professionally measured at my lab too. So for flicker and for intensity and all these things. So that's just something, obviously it's nice to show people on YouTube or videos and say, here you can see the measurement, on a real video. So rather than just showing someone a report from my lab isn't very interesting.
Do you think the Iris app is a good one? Like, I think I started with Flux and then it evolved to Iris, which I think is better.
I've used Flux, because it's free, I think. And Iris is very good. I've been using that for a couple of years now. And so you can dim in the Iris app, and that doesn't create the pulse width modulation. So no matter what screen type you have, if you dim through his app, the Iris, then you eliminate that risk of pulse width modulation. And obviously you can use it for the blue blocking as well.
Yeah, I don't know if I asked you that in our blue blocking episode, because at night, whenever I'm writing or whatever on my computer or working, I do the sleep mode, which turns the screen red. And I know some hardcore, Matt Maruka and those, some people say that's not enough. You have to combine that with the blue blocking glasses, but I don't. Do you think I'm killing myself?
No. I think so. Yeah, some of the phones, and maybe they have some like a backlighting to them, so a little bit of the blue creeps through. And depend, how hardcore are you, and what's your light situation during the day? So I did a big blog on bright light therapy, and if you're getting sunlight during the day and you're getting bright lights during the day, and bright light therapy is using therapeutically for all kinds of chronic diseases because it helps your sleep at night. And then when it helps your sleep, you feel better no matter what disease you have. So bright light therapy is being employed for things like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and things like that. So it's really important. And then, it puts a little bit less pressure on you at night to be, I have to be super hardcore and wear really restrictive glasses all day and all night and trip around my house while I'm trying to brush my teeth. And, so again, and guys like you and me, we realized, hey, it's better to replace all our light bulbs with red light bulbs and have to wear these glasses, which actually block a lot of the light and are very restrictive, but you just need the right kind of lights to begin with.
All right. So do you have a few more questions for me?
Yeah. So let's just do a couple more. We got a lot of the big ones. And this is a big one. Is it better to get a panel that's FDA approved?
Say no.
Right. And first of all, that's a trick question. None of the panels are FDA approved because some companies have claimed to be FDA approved, and I don't know who's working for them, but they were FDA registered, but they themselves didn't know the difference between there's FDA registered, there's FDA cleared, and then there's FDA approved. And so there's 3 levels. So FDA registered is literally just registering with them. It's doing some paperwork and paying a filing fee, and maybe you have to follow some of their documentation. That's it. I mean, that's it. The FDA is not coming to these factories in China and inspecting their manufacturing lines and making sure their intensity is right and doing this or that. We've seen, very recently that the FDA approves whatever, for very little evidence at all. So unfortunately, FDA doesn't really hold a lot of clout with me. That's why I'm not FDA registered or approved. I don't think it's required. The FDA put out a guideline a few years ago that basically said, as long as your device is low risk and used for only general wellness purposes, so you can't market it for medical claims, then you can put out your device. So it's in the same category as like fitness devices and a lot of the health trackers. They didn't want to have to regulate all these Oura rings and Fitbits and things like that. So they came out with this guideline that says as long as it's a low risk device, which red light therapy is, there's practically no contraindications. And the only ones, like I said, are if you have excessively high intensity. So again, it's very weird. We're in the alternative wellness industry, but then all these people are like, oh, I really want an FDA approved product. But like, I thought we were trying to like kind of do our own thing and take care of our own bodies. And, I think that's one of the biggest fallacies of like, we kind of want to be our own doctors and take care of our own health. But then a lot of times we replaced doctors with influencers and Dave Asprey and Ben Greenfield, and you just do whatever they tell you to do. So we're supposed to take our own health into our own hands and not into Ben Greenfield's hands or not into the FDA hands, whoever. We need to take care of ourselves. So, and also I'll also add, I think V-Light is not FDA registered because they know the law, and V-Light, they do studies and they do a little bit of they're kind of borderline. They're kind of marketing for brain health, which is a big deal. So I would follow V-Light because they're head up by Lou Lim, which is a doctor and has published real studies and he knows his stuff. So if V-Light can shove products up people's noses without FDA approval, I think we'll be okay. So that's a big one of the FDA. And even if they are approved, what does that really mean in this day and age? Seriously.
That's a good point. Yeah, I was forced to get it for my Panacea product. I guess it must be different for nutritional supplements, especially if they're shipped in foreign, which mine is from Russia, shipped here to the US. And so I was like forced to get it. Otherwise I wouldn't have got it, but that's a different story.
Yeah, that's the thing. If I have to, get registered someday, I got to do what I got to do. But right now it doesn't seem like it's required. It seems like it's more of a marketing grab to say, oh, we're FDA approved. Oh, wait, no, we're not. We're FDA registered. So it's been like such a joke. So yeah, and again, there's not much implication about quality or safety, because they're only going to audit you or investigate you if there's a massive problem, and all these customers complain and say they had an adverse reaction. So really not going to have an issue. I think there was one other thing I want to cover was pulsing. Because Joov came out with pulsing, and now unfortunately everyone's going to be educated about pulsing from Joov. So it's really disturbing. And they put on Ben's blog, Ben's most recent blog you sent to me. I got to find the actual quote because it's out of control.
My ignorant view on pulsing is that, from what I heard like a couple of years ago, that's why EMFs are damaging, is because they're not a constant on. It's a pulse on off. And I forget who I heard it from, but they said that it penetrates deeper, the EMFs, when it pulses. I don't know if that's on track.
Right. So I'm trying to find the actual quote, but that's essentially the quote Ben is making on his blog about Joov, which is not necessary, which, it's very context dependent. You got to know the details. Basically he's claiming that specifically Joov's pulsing allows for more penetration, which is not true. Because first of all, when you pulse something, if you just switch over to pulsing, you go to your light switch, you go on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off. That's pulsing, right? So they do it at a certain frequency. Maybe they can do 10 pulses per second. That's 10 hertz. So hertz is the unit you use when you're talking about pulsing. And 10 hertz is a common one, 40 hertz, 100 hertz, and they can get into the invisible range, just like flicker, very high frequency pulsing. And basically there's nothing intrinsically special about pulsing that we know of right now. There are some theories that say, okay, maybe there's some cellular actions that if it syncs up right with your cellular actions, certain gated ion channels and whatnot, that maybe it can help, improve the effectiveness. But again, that's a pretty long way off if we ever get that kind of understanding and sophistication. So he says the unique feature uses pulsed near-infrared wavelengths at 10 hertz to penetrate deeper into the muscle tissue, which helps stimulate healing and tissue regeneration. And the citation, more on that science here, brings us to Joov's blog, which it's not much of a citation. But Joov's blog has 3 references for pulsing. So all these claims of superiority and extra benefits and mechanisms, they only have 3 references, and none of them are direct studies with their own products, which should be the first red flag. It's not their own product. They should be able to prove, if Ben's claiming it's increasing pulsing, they should have a test that we pulsed some cadaver tissue. We found some, I don't care how they do it, get some cadaver tissue, pulse it, and use continuous, and tell us if that improved penetration. And I'm going to tell you, it probably doesn't, because that's what you're doing. You're turning on, off. So actually within the same time frame, you get less dose, and inherently you get less penetration. And that's how all the studies for pulsing calculate it, is that they're going by the average intensity, because they know it's off half the time if you've got a 50% duty cycle. So the study that they reference is very clear about this. That Joov references and Ben Greenfield references is very clear that the light, you reduce the intensity. So why do a lot of studies say, oh, we get better penetration? Why would Ben Greenfield think that? It's because most of the studies are using high-powered lasers, and so it enables them to use an even higher power and pulse it, because it gives some quench period in between the pulses for the tissue to cool down. And so the quench period actually reduces the tissue heating. I'm reading this off the study that Joov says. It reduces tissue heating and allowing the use of much higher peak power densities than those could be safely used in continuous wave. So basically, you can use a higher intensity peak power, but pulse it so that way you're not damaging the skin, and that's how you get better penetration. That's how a lot of studies will say, oh, pulsing was superior than continuous, because they jacked up the power output. That was the point of the pulsing. So you really got to understand that context. And when you read the studies that Joov is actually citing, it actually goes against it. And even Joov tries to redefine the meaning of the word quench that they pulled from this study. So basically, quench, I went to school for engineering. In metallurgy, when you want to quench something, you're cooling off like a metal rapidly, like you're dipping it in water and letting it cool off rapidly, and that helps affect the properties of the metal you're working with. So that's that's what quenching means, is to rapidly cool something. But Ben and Joov are kind of saying that the quench period takes place and when the cells are pulsed, and it only lasts a few seconds. This short pause makes a big difference, allowing cells that are under oxidative stress to respond even better to the light. So they're saying it allows, it helps with oxidative stress and to respond better to the light. But this definition of quench from the actual study says it reduces tissue heating, allowing for the potential use of higher peak power and densities. So they're redefining the meaning of the word quench and taking it out of context because it sounds fun and it sounds nice and it sells well, but it's a technical term that actually has meaning, and it would be nice if companies would respect the basic meaning of certain words. So anyway, the Joov doesn't add any extra penetration, and they haven't really proved that it's really a desirable feature. So again, like I said, pulsing enables higher intensities, which can be a good thing in therapeutic settings. There might be some brainwave entrainment for pulsing. So if you do 10 hertz or 40 hertz, 10 hertz is alpha frequency, 40 hertz is gamma frequency. So V-Light has been using those frequencies a lot for some of their brain products. So again, you can kind of brainwave and train yourself with this, and hopefully give yourself a beneficial frequency and help your brain out. But again, I saw a study that used continuous wave compared to pulse width, and the continuous wave also produced gamma in the brain. So again, sometimes you can just give your body something natural, and you don't have to force it to do what you want to do. You can just give it something natural and trust it to do the right thing with that. So you've got the brainwave, you've got extra power, you've got brainwave entrainment, and then, like I said, maybe further down the line, with more studies, we could find maybe some frequencies that work kind of in sync with some of the timing of certain biologic processes, and can give you that kind of harmonious effect. But that seems pretty advanced, and again, if people are out there making those kind of claims, you got to be really dubious of it.
Wow, that was great. We covered a lot of ground, and yeah, there's so much marketing. It's really wild. Where, it just seems like claims and things are being thrown around kind of haphazardly.
And unfortunately, almost intentionally out of context, just to rewrite what basic science means. It's written like in plain English in the study. Like I didn't have to do any interpretation here.
Right. Wow. Well, do you want to jump into some Q&A questions?
Yep.
All right. Yeah, I think I'll try to. A lot of them you already answered, actually.
Good.
This is a common one, though. Is it better to use triple LT in the morning or the evening?
Good. Yeah, that's a good question. If you're going to do it on the face, I like to do it in the morning because you get that bright light therapy effect on your face and on your eyes, and helps you kind of wake up and energize for the day. And then in the evening, probably don't do the face and do a different part of the body, do just the torso or the back, and try not to get too much brightness into the eyes. But again, it's kind of a self-discovery. Some people prefer in the morning. Some people get a little too energized if they do it at night, even if you're not doing it in the eyes. So you kind of got to play around with that. But I'd say doing the face in the morning is really great, no matter what you're doing. And then maybe the torso, sometimes even in the chest and the sternum, can help with some melatonin production.
Awesome. And the post I made for this show for people to send questions had you with the goggles. And so we got a few questions on, do I need to protect my eyes? Why do you wear those goggles?
Yeah, right. So those are welding goggles, made for blocking industrial welding and intensities and light. And you generally should not need to wear goggles unless your product is unsafely high for intensity, which according to their advertising, they are. So most of my competitors are. So if you have a reasonable amount of intensity, as long as you're not staring directly into the light, maybe I'd say less than 20 milliwatts per centimeter squared. So I would move further away if you're treating your eyes and your face. And again, red and near infrared light is beneficial to the eyes as long as you have sufficiently low intensity and dose. And so, I would strongly recommend, unless you have a pre-existing condition or some people are just kind of overwhelmed by the brightness. I wouldn't wear goggles. I usually don't wear goggles.
Yeah, my neighbor in Idaho had a detached retina that I guess was like kind of painful, and so I was helping him out. I got him on vitamin E, niacinamide, and then like the Chroma little handheld near infrared light. They don't sell products anymore for some reason. I don't know why, but I gave him one of those, and I was just like, shine this in your eyes directly, right on your eye for 30 seconds in each one, once or twice a day. And he got a benefit. I don't know if it was the combination of the E and the niacinamide or what, but that's kind of like my all-around eye health biohack is those three things.
Yeah, for sure. And again, you get those benefits, unlike sunlight, which has some UV, a little bit of UV is beneficial, but getting that red and near infrared light in low doses. And there was a study that got famous through CNN, I think, in some of the major news outlets last year, that one research article used a red flashlight, like a deep red flashlight, and it had a diffuser on it, which I don't think people were paying attention to that detail. It had like a white kind of diffuser, so don't just stare at like a unprotected LED. But it was like 40 milliwatts per centimeter squared for 3 minutes, and they got a benefit. So again, that's a pretty decent dose, and it was beneficial.
That's awesome. Get a few questions on skin. Is it true that red light can reduce acne and stretch marks? Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so. There's tons of studies on the skin benefits. I think the near infrared study I was talking about, they specifically list acne here, psoriasis, and scars. They write it here, and so it can reduce scars. I had a scar on my back that was significantly reduced. And again, red and near infrared can be beneficial for that. I'd say with acne, sometimes companies combine blue light and red light because blue light can help kind of kill off the acne. But I do think red light, if you have a red light on its own, I would try that first.
Yeah, I just remembered. So you were talking about the pulsing, the near infrared at 10 hertz. I've been messing with Soluma Pro. I think my Shen Blossom friend Brandon, Blue Shield guy, told me about that, and they use blue, red, I think near infrared, and then a couple green little diodes. I have like their whole. It's super expensive. Like they're stupid expensive. Like I don't know what the markup is, but I definitely do feel charged up, and I think a lot of that is the blue. Yeah, because I know was it Philips that used blue light for acne, or didn't Philips have like a product you told me about?
I know
Neutrogena.
Neutrogena had a mask, and there's a bunch of masks out there, and this Neutrogena had to recall their masks because the blue light diodes were too close to the eyes, and there was a concern of causing eye damage from the blue light. And if you read some of the Amazon reviews for just some of the generic masks, a lot of people are complaining about eye issues. So first off, turn off the blue, because a lot of times they have setting, they're just RGB lights on a mask, and so make sure the blue light is off, maybe even the green, and just use the red. But yeah, so there's this whole world of all these masks and the Soluma and all these things, and even the Soluma is highly regarded. And when I check their FDA registration, and they are legit, they only report 7 milliwatts per centimeter squared as intensity, which again, it's more designed for the skin, more designed for just kind of more surface treatment. So again, it's not all about, you need the super high intensity. This highly regarded thing that is very well reviewed uses a relatively low intensity because they know you don't need that much. So it's interesting when you start to read like Soluma or Omnilux or some of these major brands and look at what they're doing. Don't do what all the panel companies are doing. Look at some of those more legit brands that have been around for a while.
Interesting. Yeah. This is a common one. Will red light help with SAD, seasonal affective disorder? Is that more the UV does that, or?
I wrote in my bright light therapy article that red light therapy has very high intensity, not just intensity, but brightness. It's the lux, which is a measure of brightness. And you can get pretty high with a lot of red light panels. So like I said, if you use that in the morning, that can help you kickstart your day and give you your energy and then train your circadian rhythm and kind of give you that happy lamp kind of feeling. But yeah, like you said, a lot of happy lamps are broad spectrum, like white lights, or sometimes they're even blue lights or green lights. I've got one that I've been working on is a 505 nanometer cyan light. So it's a mix of it's right in between blue and green. So it's a little bit safer for the eyes, but it still gives you that very strong bright light stimulus. So that was kind of a prototype that I'd like to launch pretty soon.
I love that one.
Yeah. No, I've got it on. Like I use it almost every morning. So I do that and my red lights, and I've got a Spurti UV lamp. So I don't think the Spurti does, the UV lamp does a lot for kind of bright light therapy. I think obviously you just need it for that hormonal vitamin D, just making sure your body's working right and your immune system's working right. So you could just get by with a bright light, whether it's red or blue or green or white.
That's cool. Yeah, the ultraviolet thing's such a trip. It's so complicated. And then you add in vitamin D. Like I'm having Jim Stevenson Jr. on, the psychosteroid hormone D Facebook group guy here soon. And yeah, I guess your skin makes lumisterol L3, and I was just reading my notes from him the other day, and I guess that could turn into a lot of different molecules. I think like tacosterol, and it gets so complex, but you bypass that when you take D3 instead of letting your body choose what it wants to make from the light. It's interesting.
Right. And yeah, I think I liked something he said, I think when he talked to you about, you can wash off that vitamin D that's or that precursor that's built on your skin. So I always try to shower before I use the Spirity. And then he's kind of like, well, maybe you shouldn't shower for a few days if you're going out in the sun and trying to get that to absorb or whatever. So that's an interesting tidbit, is not to wash away that whatever that precursor you said was for vitamin D.
Yeah,
if you go to the beach or whatever.
I think it's L3. Yeah. I left my full body tanning light at the house up north, and so I have to get a Spurti or something. And for people that don't know, it's good to pre-dose with red light before you use that, right? Because it'll kind of protect your telomeres or something. I forget the details.
Yeah. I mean, generally, like I said, there's a great study called Infrared and Skin, Friend or Foe, written by Dr. Hamblin, that this more recent one is kind of derivative of, but it talks about photo preconditioning with you can use red light therapy. You can they use some heat lamps in the study, so you can precondition your cells, which protect it from the near infrared, because naturally, when the sun's rising in the horizon, you're getting very little UV. You're getting preferentially more red and near infrared from that spectrum during sunrise and during sunset. So it protects you from that midday sun, and actually afterwards as well, it's photo rejuvenating. So it can heal you if you had some photo damage after the fact. So you can use it before, or you can use it after. And I think there was also a connection with the easy water in your cells as well for absorbing the UV a little bit more efficiently.
Yeah, it's such a fun topic. I think we're, like you said, I appreciate your, I don't know kind of approach, but this is what I know now, because that's kind of what this topic is, right? Like I'm sure in 10 or 20 years, our knowledge of light is going to be much different, right?
Yeah, right. This is, we're just barely grasping at the cusp of it. And it's kind of like the evolution with vitamin D and all these things you guys are revealing of like, well, you can't just supplement it, and it's not just a molecule, and it's interacting with all these other things. And when I researched the benefits of sunlight, it's always just vitamin D, UV. But now we're starting to recognize, no, it's also all the other wavelengths. It's red and near infrared and the mid, and all of it can benefit us. So we're just getting at that cusp right now.
Well, I saw an ad by Joov where there's I think an athlete on a towel doing a stretch with a yoga block or something, and they had the Joov go in the sunlight. What do you think about using red light while you're outside? No, I'm just kidding.
No, I mean, I was like, I don't even think their panels are rated to be used outdoors. If the rain comes, you're going to short it out. So I don't know why they're telling people to go outside with it in the first place. And second off, yeah, I did, and sometimes people ask me that. It's a good question of like, oh, I want to add more red and near infrared light outdoors. Can I use my panels outdoors? And I try to just like politely say, hey, you're getting enough from the sun. You're going to be fine. You don't have to go. We're getting a little bit out of balance here with trying to supplement, stand outside and have a Spirity on one side and have a light panel and all these things. But actually, it brings up another interesting FAQ of people ask, should they have their lights off in their house, or should they be in a dark room when they're doing red light therapy? Because there's this very strong optical illusion that if you have sunlight pouring in your room and you turn on a red light panel, it seems very dim. It seems like, why, my panel is supposed to be really strong, and when I have the sunlight coming in through a window or lights on, it's like an optical illusion, because compared to white lights, which contain blue and which have a stronger kind of optical brightness to it, your red light seems like it's not doing much. So it's like, should I turn off all my lights? And no, you don't. It doesn't stop. Being in a dark room doesn't make a difference. And like I said, when I do my bright light therapy in the mornings, I got all my lights turned on. I've got every light I can find in the room just turned on, and just blast myself with, and not necessarily for the photobiomodulation, just for that bright light stimulation.
That's a good point. Yeah, my last cabin in California, I don't know if you remember, I lined one of the bedrooms in aluminum foil, and it took me like a couple hours, and I taped up aluminum foil on all the four walls.
Yeah.
And I think I was using the big Joov at that point.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it did anything. I would imagine the aluminum foil would have reflected a lot of the light. My idea was just to amplify the effect by making basically a red light room.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think some people have asked, should they use, there's the little grow tents, or should you line the room with reflectiveness? And, with the concept I said that a lot of the light is reflecting off your skin anyway, maybe you do want to preserve all that light and kind of save it. But again, most of the light therapy is going to come from the direct effect from just standing right in front of it and being as close as possible. It's like when you look at your rear view mirror, it says objects are further away than they seem, are closer than they seem. It's because that reflection actually adds distance to the light. So some people ask me, can I set up mirrors and all these things? I'm like, no, just stand in front of the panel as close as possible, even skin contact, and you don't need all these elaborate mirrors and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's funny. In Lawrence Wilson's book, I kind of just skimmed it because a lot of it was like, to me, old information. Take your omegas, take your calcium, take your zinc, your ascorbic acid. But there's a part which was interesting, which he was saying, hang the heat lamps. Like if someone's on like a hospital bed or bedridden, you could create like a rig. And I was like, these bulbs, I mean, they could cause like third degree burns. That sounds so dangerous to like, I don't know of any elderly person that would allow their family to hang these heat bulbs above them, right, for horizontally.
Yeah, and a lot of people think about, I mean, I my first red light therapy was a heat lamp, and I had massive back pain, and I was trying to be as close as I could to the heat lamp because I had so much back pain, but it was like burning, like literally burning me, but I didn't even care. But so, and then if I touched the reflector or whatever, I'd be like, oh my God, I'm going to burn myself. But then people are asking me, can I hang my panel above me and hang it on the wall? And again, if you have a good contractor or how to find a stud and drill in the hooks right and all that stuff, you can do it safely. It's just a matter of, having a little bit more of the DIY skills.
Right. We got a few more questions here. This is an interesting one. What effect does red light have on plants? Like, can you hit your plants with red light?
Plants love 660 nanometer. That's a super popular wavelength for grow lights. Some people report their plants are doing better and they're feeling better and everything's great. So 660 is a good wavelength for them. I think 850 or whatever, most of the near infrared would be mostly useless. So a little bit extra 660 can be helpful.
Cool. Now that I'm in Colorado, maybe I'll start another Mitolife line out here.
For grow lights, right?
Right. This is a common one. Is there such thing as too much red light? We had a bunch of those questions, and to the biphasic dose response, right?
Right. And so we didn't do too much. So the biphasic dose response is kind of a complicated way of saying, too much leads to an inhibition of the cell. So basically, and we don't know exactly where that is, and it depends on what you're treating and why you're treating and how often you're treating. So there is a point of, where it becomes kind of counterproductive. There's not actually necessarily a detriment. You're not going to feel pain or a specific issue as long as, like I said, it's non-thermal. But again, it just becomes kind of redundant and you get into that inhibition region and you want to be in the stimulatory region. And so that's why, again, I'd rather be on the lower end of a dosing curve. So you stay in the stimulatory region. And again, if you own your own product, you don't have to rush it. You can do it once a day and you do it every other day or whatever you do, and it builds up kind of a cumulative dose. So, a lot of times you don't have to rush the dose. You don't have to do too much. And yeah, I get a similar questions of like, can I leave it on me all night while I'm sleeping? Or can I use this all night? And, it's really not beneficial to do more than what's needed. So just stick with kind of a lower dose and kind of have patience to let it see it through.
Yeah, it's funny. Adam Bergstrom, a return guest on the show, he often references Ray Peat because that's one of his mentors, and I think he said in one of the recent shows, he's like, if Ray Peat would recommend you have red light on all night because darkness is a stress, and I was like, that's kind of interesting.
yeah. I don't know. I moved out to kind of a rural town, but I get tons of moonlight in, and it's much brighter than I expected. So I still have blackout curtains because the moonlight is so intense. So I don't keep on any lights at night, but I've heard that, and maybe some kids might prefer it or something like that.
Well, we love your little night lights. I think I just have 2 of them. Yep. And just those strategically placed, they add such a nice ambient light, especially if you live rural, you don't have a lot of light outside besides mood light.
Right.
Those things are great. But before we jump into your products, the last one here, I don't know if this is too controversial, but connection between red light and cancer growth. Will red light encourage cancer growth if used on a tumor?
Yeah, I mean, okay, I think for everything we've said, I'm not a doctor, so I don't, I don't give medical advice, and unfortunately, a lot of times people ask me which of my product can I use for a medical condition, and I say, hey, I'm sorry, I can't give you that kind of advice. But again, once you understand the basics of red light therapy, it's supporting your mitochondria, and a lot of times, if you're into the mitochondrial theories of cancer, it's kind of more benefiting your good cells as opposed to the cancerous cells, where your good cells are having more mitochondria and the cancerous cells have a deficiency in mitochondria. There was some contraindications where I think they were aiming higher powered lasers directly at a cancer, and right, that's problematic. But again, if you're just using an LED panel just to support your general wellness throughout, whatever kind of health issue you're going through, it's generally okay. But again, check with your doctor.
Yeah, I get the same thing with Mitolife. People, it's like multiple questions a day. What Mitolife product to use for this disease? I'm like, I'm not a doctor, but if I had that, this is what I would do, and that's kind of like the workaround. And
yeah, no, I know it's a lot to add all those disclaimers.
Well, Andrew, this was awesome. I again, like I said in the beginning, I really appreciate your passion for education and your patience for cutting out with all the Starlink disconnections.
Yeah, no problem.
Elon Musk needs to fix his stuff, but speaking of EMS, but so you've been releasing some new products, right? Or are you I think you're bringing back your body light?
Yeah, I'm just cranking them out. So yeah, I've got a body light, which reviewed pretty well in Alex's lineup. And again, it only did somewhat poorly in the intensity categories because I don't think you need tons of intensity. So I got my Reboot body light. And again, shipping times has been taking a lot longer. But that's kind of my standard body light. I've got a slightly bigger body light that I'm calling the overclocked panel because we're bumping up the power per LED, and it's covering more surface area, so it's kind of a bigger panel. So it's got a few more of the bells and whistles, like a control panel, timer, and you can control the red and near infrared wavelengths. That's actually at my third-party measurement center, my light lab right now, and so they should be measuring that next week. So again, I don't launch all my products. I haven't launched without having third-party measurements before actually launching it, which again, I didn't know this was a revolutionary concept especially for this industry, that you would just have like accurate and honest specifications for your product. You know, I didn't know. Yeah, I worked as an engineer for 10 years. This is like normal for me, but apparently it's just anything goes. You know, and I missed the memo. I didn't get that kind of training program for just make up your numbers, and it's great. So and that one's going to have 5 wavelengths, and again, we're going to verify the wavelengths at the lab. But yeah, I've got a bunch of great night lights, book lights, you know, and again, you know, I was just noticing such a gap in the market for reading lights, for sensor lights, ones that kind of automatically turn on as you walk by, night lights and book lights that are all red. So that way, you know, again, it's not for photobiomodulation, it's just for your sleep and circadian rhythm, that if you can use a book light or a night light that's pure red and you avoid green and you avoid blue, then it's better for your circadian rhythm. So, you know, again, I've been one of the first companies that have been putting out more and more night lights like that. But yeah, and, you know, I've got a couple different sizes. I've got a beacon body, kind of half body light, which comes with a little built-in stand. And that one's ultra low EMF because it's got no fans and it's got a power adapter that's separate from the panel. So it's super low EMF, so even if you're super close to the skin. And, you know, even my Rex and my Groove panels are super low EMF, but this one even takes it even further. So, you know, again, you know, just a great lineup of different size panels. You know, there's not just, you know, a panel for specific medical conditions. It's kind of, I want people to kind of look at the sizes and the convenience, and maybe if they have a preference for wavelengths, and then I've got various wavelengths, and it's not just, you know, oh, I need a certain wavelength to treat a certain condition. They all kind of do a similar mechanism. It's really more just find a panel, you know, that kind of works for your situation in terms of size and coverage, and, you know, bigger isn't necessarily better. And I like a lot of the smaller lights because they're more convenient. I can keep them near my couch or near my office table or near my bed and just use it and then put it back to the side. So I, you know, I prefer convenience over anything else.
Yeah, you have a portable light that's $300, and it's nice to see it's not like 600.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I came out with that my Beam portable light, which is 1 wavelength, and it's only a 100, like 159. And that came out shortly after Joov came out with a handheld battery powered light, and when their first model only had 1 wavelength, and so they were selling a 660 model and a 850 model. And so I would talk to people that would say, oh yeah, I bought both, and they were and I was like, why? And they were like, oh well, I needed one for skin and I needed one for, you know, the deeper penetration. And like I said, it's kind of a fallacy. You know, red can do both, and near infrared can kind of do both, so you don't need both. But it was like all that marketing fallacies of like, oh yeah, I bought both. I'm like, oh my God, this is just getting out of control. So I made one that's half the price, just a single wavelength. And again, you know, a lot of people are still concerned about near infrared, and you know, I can respect them for it. So that one's just red. So if people just want that. But yeah. So, you know, I'm constantly testing new products, you know, writing new blogs, like you said. You know, my blogs have gotten pretty popular. I've got a YouTube channel, so, you know, I try to show people in person, you know, demonstrating certain things and measuring competitors' products, and you know, it's been very helpful for a lot of people to get more context.
Yeah, they're great. And one of my favorite products of yours, I was really surprised I fell in love with it, was the Rave, the little LED strip, because it's so bright. Like if your bathroom is pitch black, you turn that thing on, and I almost prefer it to the automatic light just because it lights up the whole room and you can see everything. And it's so affordable. Like it's so great to have.
And that was my first, you know, pretty much my first red night light that came out a couple of years ago, and it was kind of like just making something really simple and really effective without a lot of bells and whistles. And yeah, it's just a little strip light that you can plug into any USB adapter, and it's like 7 watts, which is pretty good power. And yeah, it's a really nice 660 nanometer kind of nightlight, and you can kind of plug it in anywhere around the house, and puts out a good amount of light.
Mm-hmm. I don't want to keep you too long. We went a little over, but you also have the shirts, which I probably need to order more of because I love them, but I think they're kind of easy to stain. I don't know. Maybe I just have to wear a jacket when I'm eating a steak or something.
Right. No, I definitely, I wear them more as an undershirt. So these are far infrared t-shirts. And so basically, and you can find some studies about them, and it's a technology where they embed certain ceramic particles. It takes your body heat and kind of reflects them back to you as a far infrared ray. So you can get, it's essentially very low dose far infrared all day, or you can wear them to bed. I kind of wear them as an undershirt. And so the far infrared rays, they come from the ceramic particles, and I didn't develop them. I'm not in a chemistry lab developing these particles. It's a company called Imana, that's owned by Solvay, which is a big chemical corporation, but they developed it, and they've done their clinical studies, and they've, it's not me. I saw TrueDark came out with some infrared blankets. I'm like, I'm not going to trust TrueDark. They said, they put charcoal and this and that in their fibers. Where does TrueDark get this stuff? Anyway, I went to Amana, which is like a legit company. They have clinical studies, and they have they're very hardcore about me registering with them and what claims I can make and what I can't make, and that's how you're working with a legit company too. They're not just saying, "Oh, wear this blanket and you're gonna sleep better and eat, run faster, and all this stuff." So it's a really legit company. It's I want to bring to the market probably the most legit technology you can find of this, and it's kind of cutting edge. It's not really on a lot of people's radar. It's again, a lot of my products are very educational just to bring awareness, but you got to try it out. It feels, especially in the winter, it feels very warm and nice. And, and again, you get that far infrared benefit.
Yeah, I noticed if I wear those in the summer, I'm like a walking sauna. And so definitely in the heart of the winter, the middle of the winter, that as an undershirt is amazing. And I feel like I need less layers because I'm reflecting, was it like 90% of your infrared back in your body, something?
I don't think it's a percentage wise. It's just some very low kind of intensity number, of the far infrared that gets emitted back to you. And that's why it's important that you want that skin contact with it. And they have requirements for how you even design the shirt to have enough skin contact and make sure, it's kind of snug, it's kind of, especially on bigger people like me, that it's really snug, but that's the point of it. You can't just have some loose blanket draped over you and think you're getting all this benefit. So again, there is science behind it, and we're very respectful of the science and not just making outrageous claims. So it's a really cool technology. I think more and more people will start to realize it. There are studies, if they put into socks, there's another company called Celliant that's another very legit company. If you don't buy it from me, or if you want a different type of apparel, look for Celliant. And they make it into socks, and they studied it for diabetic circulation, so you get better kind of circulation through the skin. And that's some of the skin benefits that you get from my shirts as well.
That's awesome. Well, I just want to say too, I appreciate your transparency. One of your blog posts from September is the best full body red light therapy panels on Alibaba, and you test 3 on there because that could be your competition, right? It's like if you just say point blank, you're like, if you want to start your own red light company, here you go, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, at this point, I'm also trolling some of my competitors of like, you guys aren't doing anything special. Stop pretending like you are. And also, a lot of people are strapped for cash. They're looking for a cheaper alternative. I think a lot of people, they come to me because they want the quality, and they want the customer service, and they want the information. So obviously, and the warranty support. If you go to Alibaba, if you get a defective panel, there's not a lot they can do for you. They might send you a replacement part and you have to figure it out yourself. So it's very, kind of touch and go, but might be worth the risk because you could get 2 or 3 panels for the price of one. And so, I want people to be able to access this affordably, whether it's from me or from Amazon or Alibaba. And I think it helps, people to try it out and say, yeah, this is a cheap thing that I tried out. Maybe I'll buy a better brand next time, but this is enough for me right now, and people can get that benefit. So, I think people should just have access to the choices. And, when people buy from me, I think they're very happy with it because I gave them the options and I let them understand what's out there. If they want to buy from Joov or Alibaba, at least they got to shop around and they bought from me. I didn't have some big fancy, sales funnel that kind of really tricked them into it, and then they have buyer's remorse. That's definitely what I don't want to do that when I'm selling giant 25-pound panels.
That's awesome. And yeah, I'm looking through your blogs. You also have like a flexible blog, and I've been playing with like the Flex Beam, which I think you commented on when I got it. You're like, I could have sent you mine or something because you test everything.
Yeah, I tested one because they were just doing some real funny business again with their claims, and it was a good opportunity to debunk a concept because they said they're battery powered and so they're naturally low EMF, which is generally a true statement, except for their product, which, because it has fans built in and it has all these pulsing, which when you pulse some electronics, you create EMFs. So you got fans built in, you got pulsing, you got all these fancy modes. I clocked in very high EMFs, higher than my panels, when some of their affiliates on some Facebook groups were like, oh, panels are always high EMF. I was like, not my panels. So again, so it's really context dependent. So generally battery powered, if you get a like a flashlight or some of these battery powered little bricks, they're very low EMF, and that's great because you're not connected to the wall at all. It's fully DC, and so there's no flicker, no EMF. Maybe static EMF, but that's usually not a concern. So I got to like kind of prove that was kind of a myth and a fallacy. If you start to add in all these funky features and fans, then actually you create more EMFs in what should be a low EMF product.
Right. Did you ever try the Quantlet? I think that was like 5 years ago. It lasted like 2 or 3 years, and I think it broke and I just threw it away. But I've seen a couple. I miss it because I think there was like one brand that someone posted. I forget who. It was like a little wristwatch thing that beams light into your arteries there, and I was like, that kind of makes sense, right? Like,
yeah, and I've seen similar wrist things. I think that one was a little extravagant, right? It had lights and it had cooling and it had a few things, which again, as an engineer, you want like sometimes a minimalist design, because the more features you add, more components you add, that creates more statistical probability that an individual component will fail. So again, like as all these panels get more complex and they have more features and connectivity and all these things, you're creating more and more opportunities for failure. So, again, I try to keep things pretty simple, easy to maintain, easy to repair. So I've seen that. And again, there's different parts of the skin, and that's what I was trying to dig into with my penetration blog. You have thinner skin in different parts of the skin, so maybe through the wrist in that part is a good way to access getting it into the blood and getting it through the skin. There's a couple points like that, like we said, the nose, maybe even the belly button.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I think if people want to learn more, definitely check out Andrew's blog at GembaRed, and it looks like you're having a Black Friday sale. Does it start this weekend?
Starts on Black Friday. Cool. which is a tough concept for, I think, people who think Black Friday is like all November, and maybe I'll have to do that next year, but this year it's still Black Friday is Black Friday.
Awesome. And like, will my discount code stack? I forget how it was last year.
So awesome. I'm going to discount all the individual products, and then your discount will add 10% to everything.
Awesome. I think this will go live the following week, but I'll still give you a shout out because before the show posts, because I think you're offering affordability and effectiveness and most importantly education. So once again, thank you, Andrew. Appreciate it, and we'll have to do it again. As I'm sure, like every year, new things surface about this industry.
It clearly will never end, no matter how much I try to debunk it.
Awesome. Well, I'll put the links below where you guys can check out Andrew's YouTube and social media and website. And thanks, man, for coming on the show.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Stick around as I close it out. What do you guys think about that? Did Andrew shift your perspective and ideas about red light therapy? I know a lot of this might seem nuanced and almost like semantics, but it actually makes a huge difference, especially when it comes to your wallet. Because if you fall for a lot of the things that he brought up, then you'll be sold on a really expensive product that has a few more bells and whistles, but those bells and whistles are more gimmicks than anything. I've often talked about far infrared saunas and the insane price that companies are charging for even just a 1 or a 2 person sauna with chromotherapy lights, and some of them offer full spectrum options, which to me is unnecessary. You don't need to combine those therapies because you could OD on, for example, Andrew's lights. If you're doing red light therapy in the sauna, that's counterproductive because you get that biphasic dose response. And so you get essentially diminishing returns. Essentially, you can lose your benefits if you use, say, 660 and 850 red light for too long. So if Andrew piqued your interest, definitely go and check out his blogs. I'm going to post the link below. But it's just GembaRed.com, and then he has a blog tab on the top. And he puts out blogs really consistently breaking down different myths of red light therapy. From my experience using red light therapy, I truly believe it's not just a 1% improvement in your health, like some people say. I think it's really foundational. Even if you're getting full spectrum sunlight, and I would say even more so if you're exposing your skin to sunlight often, red light therapy is an excellent, affordable sunscreen because you'll make reactive oxygen species depending on the type of melanin that you have in your body, depending on what your ancestry is. But no matter your ancestry, everyone can benefit from pre-dosing with red light before going out into the sun, or even just getting that consistent effect by using it for, like Andrew said, even 5 or 10 minutes a day. I've noticed huge improvements in everything: endurance, mental clarity, my memory, my mood, even just using red light therapy for 5 or 10 minutes, because I have so much going on and often I won't have time to use a lot of the devices that I have. And so I really have to prioritize what I spend my time on. And of course, I'm prioritizing friends and family and my loved one. But we often forget about ourselves. It's that common saying that you put your oxygen mask on first if the plane's going down. Otherwise, you can't help anyone around you, including your children or your partner. So I take that very seriously, that self-care. And I know that if I'm not functioning at my highest level, then I can't be present for others because I'm going to be stressed and tired and anxious, etc. Red light therapy has been one of those things that have made me feel stronger and more resilient to stressors, because we can't stop stressors because we're human beings on planet Earth. So we're going to have stressors, but our ability to handle those stressors is based on a lot of factors. The degree of iron overload you have / lipofuscin, the amount of calcification, the amount of fibrosis, your blue light exposure, your beneficial light exposure, the quality of water you're drinking. There's so many factors, but I think one of the most important factors is light exposure. And most modern humans on the planet are getting dosed with probably 90 to 99% harmful artificial light. They call it blue light, but it looks white, but it has a spike in the blue. And blue and green light at night not only suppresses melatonin, but destroys the skin. It's a cause of diabetes and wrinkles and skin aging and macular degeneration and so many things. It's overlooked. But the flip side to that coin is getting beneficial light. And even if someone didn't wear blue light blocking glasses or use the Iris software on their computer or put lights on the side of their monitor like I have here to offset the blue, like just a $10 NIRA light from Tractor Supply Co. If someone wasn't doing any of that, but they were consuming retinol, which protects the eyes from free radical damage, and retinol to me is not safe in cod liver oil because that comes with a substantial amount of DHA, which causes neurodegeneration and lipofuscin and accelerated aging. But dairy, cream, milk, eggs, cheese, butter, these are all great sources of vitamin A. And vitamin A is widely deficient, contrary to what you hear floating around the mainstream alternative health community, where they say, oh, you're vitamin A and copper toxic. It's actually the exact opposite. You're deficient, most likely, in bioavailable copper. So that's active copper. That's also called ceruloplasmin. And retinol is required to load 6 to 8 atoms of copper into that protein. And that protein has over 20 functions. It's involved in cytochrome C oxidase that you hear repeated over and over again in the red light therapy industry, that red light therapy supports that respiratory protein in the mitochondria to generate more energy. But you often don't hear that you need copper for CCO to work at all. So really the winning combo for red light therapy is eating animal foods, specifically dairy, getting enough copper from organ meats, beef liver specifically, or ruminant liver specifically, oysters, fruit, bee pollen, potatoes, berries. Like I have amla in a lot of my Mitolife supplements. Camu is a great source of copper because whole food vitamin C contains the tyrosinase enzyme, which contains 2 atoms of copper. And so copper is required to recycle iron. And there's no physiological mechanism besides menstrual bleeding in women to get rid of excess iron that's stuck in the tissues. So when you come at it from this context or this perspective, you start to see the foundational importance of red light therapy. It's not just a biohack. It's not just another toy or another device to play with. It's really important, and it's really a copper surrogate. As Morley often says, copper resonates with the frequency of red light, and blue light resonates with iron. So we start to see why everyone's so sick and dealing with chronic disease. They're getting irradiated at grocery stores, at their office, at their job, wherever they are. They're staring at screens nonstop. They're wearing contacts or glasses outside. They're never getting full spectrum sunlight into their eyes, and they're blocking their skin with sunscreen. Besides the chemicals, the sunscreen blocks the UVB part of ultraviolet light, and it allows in the UVA. And without that balance, they're supposed to be together in nature, then you get photoaging. And basically the breakdown of the skin and collagen production and elastin and all of that starts to go down. So this whole light subject is fascinating. I actually just finished Morley's book called Cure Your Fatigue, and near the end, he talked about the physics of light and how that topic is pretty much as deep as the copper iron story. And I really believe that. I was just listening to Alexander Wunsch on the drive home last night, and I love learning about light and how it affects our biology. And as Andrew says in a lot of his blogs, we're still in our infancy with understanding this topic, and we're going to learn more and more. And that's what makes it so exciting. I think people are overlooking the whole fish oil light connection. I used to megadose my own algae oil product and then go naked in a cold tub at solar noon and think I was doing myself good. But what I was doing was increasing lipofuscin accumulation in my tissues, shutting down my ability to perform autophagy. What I really should have been doing is taking whole food vitamin C and mixed tocopherol vitamin E. That combination is another really powerful internal sunscreen that you can use in combination with red light. Niacinamide, that form of B3, not niacin, is also a very powerful synergizer with light therapy in general. So I'll put the links below where you can check out Andrew's products. I just went crazy on his website for his Black Friday sales. Highly recommend you purchase his desk lamp if you work in an office to offset the blue light from your screen. Definitely get the Iris software. And they have a sleep mode that I always use at night that turns the entire screen red. That's very helpful to protect your brain and protect your energy production. And he also has those really cool shirts that I love in the winter. They're encoded with bioceramics that never wash away and that will actually reflect a lot of the infrared light back into your body. So I find it's really easy to stay warm in the winter when I wear that as an undershirt. And my website is matt-blackburn.com. I just put a new product up. It's the Manta Sleep Mask. It's only $35. What I like about it is that you can adjust the eye holes. So unlike normal sleep masks, the eyes are actually cut out. And so you can have your eyes wide open and they're not hitting the mask, which to me is really annoying. It puts pressure on the eyelids and everything. And so you can adjust those and it's washable. So you can throw it in the washer, and I highly recommend that. When I posted this, someone messaged me and said that they got an eye infection from wearing it because they didn't wash it enough. So if you're using it every night and maybe sweating, then definitely wash it on a regular cycle with your clothes, maybe get a few of them and switch them out. But I put on my Matt's thoughts on the bottom of the page that I actually don't use an eye mask for sleep because we black out our bedroom and make it pretty dark. I use it with New Calm, specifically in my hyperbaric oxygen chamber, or when I'm using some type of audio with over-the-ear headphones, some type of meditation track. I find that I get a tremendous benefit, kind of like a power nap, if I just shut out my visual sense with this eye mask. And my company is called Mitolife. That's mitolife.co. And Panacea is in stock as of this recording. We've been keeping that one in stock. That's one of the best sellers. And exciting news, vitamin E will be back by the second week of December. So probably by the next show, keep an eye out for the mixed tocopherol PUFA Protect. That should be back in stock. And I also forgot to mention on my Matt Blackburn site, I put the Spurti lamp up there. And they call it the Spurti D lamp, as in vitamin D. But we know that ultraviolet light has so many more effects than vitamin D. Just like the sun, vitamin D or hormone D is such a small aspect of the benefit that you get from sunlight and even isolated ultraviolet light. So in the product page there on my website, I say you also get beta endorphin, urocortin, POMC, and a breakdown of retinol into powerful retinoids that have a lot of effects. You can think of it as, quote, active vitamin A. And Morley actually talks about that in the book. So the breakdown of vitamin A from light is probably more important than hormone D. So check that out, the Spurti D light. It's really affordable. You can spend thousands and thousands on UV lights. I've tried them myself, and this is the most affordable and effective one that I've found. So thank you guys for your support with Black Friday and everything that I'm doing. I really appreciate it. I put a lot of energy into sharing this information and really going against the grain and getting attacked pretty often for doing so. But to me, it's worth it. It's all about helping people and finding out the truth, which is often 180 degrees from what we hear in the mainstream health community. If you want to delve deeper into my work, you can check out Mitolife Academy. I have 3 memberships there: basic for $10 a month, intermediate for $15 a month, and advanced for $25 a month. And if you sign up for advanced, you get 1 Q&A once a month where you can hear what I'm up to and my latest research and interests. And you get 4 private videos a month. And you can call them health optimization videos. It's a little tricks and devices and supplements that I like to take in a specific way. So thanks for listening. See you guys next Friday. Stay supercharged.